Teenage son's teacher is touching him and school is sweeping it under the rug. My son is 17 years old. A few weeks ago he was late getting home and told us the reason was that his choir teacher Mr. B drove him out to eat and then brought him home. So this man took my minor child in his personal vehicle out to eat without my knowledge or consent. He told my son if he didn't go out to eat with him he'd remove him from the school play he is directing. I told him I needed to call the school because that was not okay with me and he said here just call him yourself. He had this teacher's personal phone number. I called Mr. B and when I introduced myself he called me an idiot and hung up. He then called me back and left a voicemail saying I was brain dead for calling his personal phone number and that he may kick my son out of the school play he is directing. The next day he cornered my son and started yelling at him and threatening him, and the reason I know this is that my son had the quick thinking to pull his phone out and record him. He also recorded him again saying if he didn't go out to eat with him again or have lunch with him in his classroom he would be removed from the play. A few days later we met with the principal and gave all of the evidence and concerns we had. Today, my son was called in and told by the principal that he was no longer in the school play and that if he ever recorded a teacher without their consent again he would be punished. We live in a one-party consent state so my son did not break any law that I'm aware of. The school did nothing to the teacher. What is my next step? Do I go to the news? We are low income, would legal aid help? Any advice is appreciated. Update. I have emailed the superintendent and attached all the voicemails, text messages between the teacher and my child, and the recordings my son made. I am also going to try to file a police report after my son gets out of school today. I will try to keep everyone updated. I'm also going to try to call some lawyers and see if any would be willing to help me. Update 2. Just got a phone call from the secretary to the supervisor of secondary education, that's a mouthful, and she said she just called to let me know they got my email and that it's being taken seriously and looked into. That was quick. I emailed just a few hours ago.
What was the incident at your high school? I went to a small, public school in rural Australia. Obviously, there was your standard pregnancies, deaths and mayhem. But this one is always my favorite. There was a teacher in my high school who we all really disliked and we called Voldemort, due to the both physical and personality similarities. Dude wasn't a mass murderer or racist, but he was still a total fucking asshole. I honestly can't even remember his real name. To everyone he was just Voldemort. He also really hated being called this, and gave anyone who called him this to his face automatic detention, including myself. In the class below me I was in year 8 at the time, so year 7s had PE with Voldemort. This girl Chloe had just been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and was low so she had a can of Coke with her. She was quiet, and pretty well behaved. She started dating the class bad boy so to speak, called Otis, who is still a friend to this day. Anyways, Voldemort came up to her and demanded why she was drinking something sugary during class and in the gym. She explained to him her condition and why she needed it, and was confused because every single teacher had been informed. Voldemort said he'd heard, but he didn't believe it, and took away her Coke. Well, her boyfriend didn't like that, and asked him what the fuck he was doing. It then devolved into a shouting match between the two of them in front of the entire class, whilst she's starting to get pretty unwell. There's multiple accounts of what Voldemort's breaking point was. According to Otis himself, it was when he told him to get fucked and also get a nose job. They were in the gym doing hockey that day, and Voldemort ended up chasing Otis, a 13-year-old, around the gym with a fucking hockey stick, trying to hit him. This is again, in front of the entire class. And phones have just become a thing, so of course, every single student filmed it on their shit flip phones. Of course during this, Charlie faints. All the screaming attracts the principal, who walks in on a teacher literally chasing around and trying to kill a student, whilst another is unconscious. Suffice to say, he was fired that very same day. All the phones were confiscated so the teachers could delete the footage. Chloe was fine, and Otis became an outright legend for finally getting Voldemort to expose himself as the utter asshole that he truly was. What stupid joke still makes you laugh to this date? A man is driving down the road and breaks down near a monastery. He goes to the monastery, knocks on the door, and says, "My car broke down. Do you think I could stay the night?" The monk graciously accepts him, feeds him dinner, and even fixes his car. As the man tries to fall asleep, he hears a strange sound. The next morning, he asks the monks what the sound was, but they say, "We can't tell you. You're not a monk." The man is disappointed but thanks them anyway and goes about his merry way. Some years later, the same man breaks down in front of the same monastery. The monk accepts him, feeds him, and even fixes his car. That night, he hears the same strange noise that he had heard years earlier. The next morning, he asks what it is, but the monks reply, "We can't tell you, you're not a monk." The man says, all right, I'm dying to know. If the only way I can find out what that sound was is to become a monk, how do I become a monk?" The monk reply, You must travel the earth and tell us how many blades of grass there are and the exact number of sand pebbles. When you find these numbers, you'll become a monk." The man sets about his task. 45 years later, he returns and knocks on the door of the monastery. He says, "I have traveled the earth and have found what you have asked for. There are 145,236,284,232 blades of grass and 231,281,289,999,129,382 sand pebbles on the earth." The monk reply, "Congratulations, you are now a monk. We shall now show you the way to the sound." The monk leads the man to a wooden door, where the head monk says, "The sound is right behind that door." The man reaches for the knob, but the door is locked. He says, "Real funny. May I have the key?" The monks give him the key, and he opens the door. Behind the wooden door is another door made of stone. The man demands the key to the stone door. The monks give him the key, and he opens it, only to find a door made of ruby. He demands another key from the monks, who provide it. Behind the door is another door, this one made of sapphire. So it went until the man had gone through doors of emerald, silver, topaz, and amethyst. Finally, the monks say, "This is the last key to the last door." The man is relieved to no end. He unlocks the door, turns the knob, and behind the door he is amazed to find the source of that strange sound. "But I can't tell you what it is because you're not a monk." What's a story you don't tell people because they wouldn't believe it? When I was 11 years old, I always used to take a shortcut through the local graveyard at night when coming back from the arcade. One night there was a storm and the graveyard was muddy. I fell off my bike and hit my elbow and head, so I took cover under a gravehouse to check if I was bleeding or something else. It was already dark, but I could see 3 men carrying a bag and dumping it in an opened hole, then they proceed to cover it. I saw everything. When they left I went to the guard's place and told him what I just saw. He told me to calm down and gave me a cup of milk and told me to stay there while he went to check for himself. When he came back, he looked at me and didn't say a word. He called the police, but when they arrived I heard him told them I was on drugs and that I was lying. I freaked out, so I jumped out of the window, over the fence, and ran home. They found a decapitated body 3 days later. I work security at a double lockdown, inpatient psychiatric hospital. We have several units that specialize in both chemical dependence and mental health disorders. My unit is the stabilization unit, SU, so if you're really off your rocker or you feel like getting violent, you come visit me. We get a call for a possibly violent patient and I go check it out. It's a very tall, very slender young girl wearing what can only charitably be described as rags. Her hair is unkempt and clearly has become estranged from shampoo, and she is covered from head to toe in filth that I'm praying is not her own. She's in rough shape, clearly sick, and needs some help. She doesn't respond to any verbal questions or commands, but we can lead her around pretty easily. I'm starting to wonder why they called me up. They tell me to put her on the SU, and a couple nurses are going to clean her up a little bit, put her in scrubs, and get her sorted out. They lead her into the shower, and the patient starts screaming. Then the nurses start screaming. Then everyone starts screaming. This poor young woman is covered in what are clearly human bite marks. Everyone is freaking the fuck out. The patient didn't want to be undressed and is lashing out wildly, so she had to be put in 4-point restraints, wrists and ankles tied to the bed. All the staff are in various stages of shock, crying, praying, rending of garments, etc. Someone had clearly been keeping this young, mentally ill girl captive and abusing her for quite some time. The bites are across her torso and appendages, and there are both new and old ones. The nursing supervisor immediately calls the cops and we just stand around staring blankly at each other, thinking about how fucked up people are to each other, and the evil in this world. One of the nurses, who had been in psych nursing longer than I have been alive, suddenly yells, "You gotta be fucking kidding me." The patient had craned her neck over and sunk her teeth into the meat of her upper arm, blood oozing from between her lips. We had to put a spit shield over her face to stop her from trying. All of the bites were self-inflicted. She was able to contort herself in ways that I didn't think possible. I still think about her a lot, and I don't think yoga is as sexy anymore.
Women have read it. What's your "that's not how women work" moment? The first guy I dated wanted to go swimming, but I told him no because I started my period and felt sore and crampy. He asked me if I could finish it before the end of the day so we could go swimming the next day. Bruh, I wish it was that easy. An old boyfriend once explained that if I was having cramps, I just needed to do what his ex did. There's this one yoga pose that will make that shift in the uterus that usually takes a few days to happen, in just a few minutes. It drops, and then your period is done in 1 day instead of 4 or 5. He couldn't elaborate any further. What shifts? What drops? But he swore he was 100% right. His ex cut her period down to 1 day with yoga. We don't pee out of our vaginas. It's the urethra. I was complaining about my period, and this awful guy goes, "Just piss it out." Person on TV gives birth. 5 minutes later, belly is flat and back to normal. That's not how that works. Had a guy friend in college who seriously thought women leaked blue liquid during their periods, like what you see in maxi pad commercials. Had a very amusing convo with a gentleman once. Dude was confused why we would need pads. He asked why we didn't just go to the toilet more often on our periods. He thought that we were able to hold our period in line. You do with pee and pads are only if accidents happen. So his reasoning is that if women would be more careful we wouldn't need menstrual products. Props to him, he was apologetic after I explained it to him and overall respectful. Women's nipples don't spin around. I'm at the store with my friends stocking up on pads, tampons, etc. As I'm putting boxes in the cart, my friend starts generally complaining about the prices. Understandable, so I agree. We finish up in the aisle and as we're walking away, a full-grown 30-something looking man mumbles, "Just hold your pee like everyone else." We were so taken back that we didn't even say anything. I never realized before this moment how utterly dense some people can be. The best situation I can think of was something a friend of mine said once. His sister was breastfeeding and said something like, "I don't know if I have enough left to her baby." So my friend kindly suggested that someone else can volunteer and asked me. I said, "Well, I'm not lactating, since I don't have a baby," and he was honestly shocked to learn that only women who actually gave birth are able to breastfeed. He was convinced every woman just casually has boobs full of breast milk at all times. He was 25 at that time. I will never forget this. A guy once told me he knew I was a virgin because my boobs were small. That boobs grow every time a woman has sex.
The biggest regret you live with every day. When I was 17, I was having a party at my house. This was a long time ago, many years. I had to house for the night and was throwing a little party. We had a bonfire, drinks, you name it. Everyone was supposed to sleep at my house that night. I told people to bring tents and we would be sleeping outside. The rule was if you drank, you had to sleep there that night. Everything was going great. We had a pond out back and my friend and I were doing a little fishing. This was my friend since elementary school, we did everything together. We were talking back and forth and he brought up his ex. He was talking about how much he missed her and just a bunch of stupid crap. I told him that he needed to move on. He was very drunk that night and he got pissed. We started arguing and he was yelling at me about minding my own business and he didn't understand the relationship. He started getting physical and everything. I told him to piss off. He went inside, grabbed his keys, and left. I didn't even try to stop him. The next day people were picking up their tents and whatnot. Back then, we didn't have cell phones in our pockets so information didn't spread in seconds. I was waiting for my parents to get home and heard the phone ringing. It was Jared's parents. They called me to tell me Jared had died. He wrapped his car around a telephone pole and died on impact. He was going almost 90 miles per hour. His mother had no idea that he was at my party the night before. That was the hardest thing I had to tell someone. I waited a day or two before I could manage to tell her. I was the reason he got in his car that night. His mother forgave me years after everything happened. I attended his funeral and was asked to leave. I never got closure for what happened. My friend died because we got into a fight. That is something I live with every day for the rest of my life. My advice, don't fight over stupid crap.
What's the most disgusting thing you've seen someone do with no shame? I was the only woman in an otherwise all-male office, and we had one bathroom. We all took turns cleaning it, and I was fine doing my part. Until we figured out that the reason it always smelled bad was because a 60-year-old man was urinating on the floor. There was a drain, and not the toilet. My boss said something to him, and he shrugged and said my wife cleans up after me at home. He was told his wife doesn't work here, but it didn't matter and he kept doing it. From then on out I refused to use that bathroom, and started going down the street to the gas station every time I needed to go. Since I wasn't using it, I didn't have to help keep it clean and there was no fucking way I was going to help keep that bathroom clean when a grown-ass man was literally peeing on the floor.
My boyfriend got turned on by something disgusting last night. I am not looking for advice. I think I just need to tell someone, and not have him find out. I'm scared of what he will do if he does find out. I'm going to leave him. I think I have to. I don't know how I could be in a relationship with someone like this. He's playing video games 5 feet from me and I'm honestly terrified of him. Last night we were trying to pick out a movie to watch on Amazon. We ended up settling on a serial killer documentary. About Albert Fish. We haven't been together too long, maybe 6 months, but I know he loves everything horror, and I'm not exactly opposed to it. So one hit play. Less than 10 minutes in, I have goosebumps all over my body, and I feel like vomiting. I asked to turn it off and he said no, it was just getting good. It gets to a part where he details killing a little girl, and my boyfriend stuck his hand in my pants. I asked him to stop and he did, but he didn't stop touching himself over his pants, but still, I'm trying not to put too much detail, because it makes me sick, but when the doc was over, we went to his room, and he wanted to have sex. I didn't want to, but said we could do other stuff. During that he called me the name of one of the victims twice. I don't think this is normal. Maybe I'm vanilla or whatever, but this is so far too much that I don't care. Maybe I'm boring. We haven't talked about it today. He woke up and made omelets, and kissed my head, and has wanted to cuddle all day. I had already told him I wouldn't leave until tonight, and I don't want to spook him, or whatever, by leaving too early. But the minute I'm out the door he's blocked, and I'm never speaking to him again. He seems perfectly normal outside of this, and I don't really think he would hurt me, but I'm not taking any chances. I've been burned before, and not again. I let it the post to let anyone know who cares when I'm home, but one of my friends is at my place and another is picking me up, so don't worry too much.
I went on a date with an underage girl, and her dad made me end up in the hospital. So I'm 20 male, and I've been looking for a girlfriend lately, so I downloaded a few dating apps. I'm pretty sure you can already see where this is going, but I'll continue. I matched with this 18-year-old girl, and we started chatting. I honestly didn't doubt her age because she did look 18. She was a little chubby, might be why. Anyways, we got along and we arranged a date. The day we met up I ended up in the hospital, because apparently her dad didn't believe her when she said she is just going out with her friends. She mentioned that she is going to have to lie to her dad because of his strictness in the messages before we met up. So he followed her. He walked in the restaurant 5 minutes after she arrived with a baseball bat in his hand. I didn't look my age, so the first thing he did was ask me my age. By now whole restaurant is looking at us. I told him I was 20 and he hit my head with the bat. I fell off the chair. Then he grabbed me by the collar and asked me what I'm doing with his 15-year-old daughter. I was shocked. I tried to tell him she told me she was 18, but of course I was not believed. He called me a bunch of names as he kept beating me up. No one tried to stop him. In fact, some people joined him in beating me up, which is not surprising considering from what they heard I was a pedo. I blacked out after a few rough hits on the head. I woke up almost a month later. I was in the hospital, of course. I had internal bleeding, cracked skull, cracked ribcage, tens of bruises all over my body, intense headache, blurry vision, and I felt like throwing up the whole time. I was told I was lucky I didn't get a brain damage. My family was called in soon and I told them everything. My mom told me she took them to the court, but they said they can't do anything without my POV, and the girl refused that she told me she was 18. And the father was let go for beating me because it was seen as protecting his daughter in self-defense. First thing I did when I grabbed my phone was take screenshots of our chats. Thankfully in that dating site you couldn't delete your messages. She had already blocked me and deleted her profile, but details of our date and the age she said she was mentioned in the chat, so I'm assuming that'd be enough. The fight happened in the restaurant, so I already know there is camera footage. I'll take everyone to court once again. I'll make them pay for all of this.
As a teenager, what was the worst thing your parents ever walked in on you doing? I don't know why I did it. But I was 14 and kinda curious. It was late, I didn't think anybody was gonna come down my hallway, so I left my door wide open. I knelt down to the ground, stuck my tongue out, placed it on the wall, and proceeded to lick the wall from the bottom to as high as I could go standing up. I looked to my left and my dad was just standing there with a big-ass smile on his face. He yells out to my mom, "Yo, this weird-ass kid is licking the wall." I still don't understand why I had the urge to do that. That was a weird night.
I follow my wife's Reddit account to anonymously give her awards. What I found destroyed me. It started with me browsing the curly hair subreddit. My wife always struggled with frizz, so I lurked there to get ideas for a hair care gift package. By chance, I saw she'd posted a selfie, along with the caption, "The lion's mane behaved itself today." She was sitting across from me in the lounge, eyes fixed on her phone. I clicked on the post and gave it an award. A few seconds later, her face lit up. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just some funny messages in the group chat," she answered. From there, I stalked her profile daily. Anytime the two of us were in the lounge, I'd award her posts and watch her smile and kick her feet around, excited. This insider information helped me nail her birthday gift, a blanket made from old t-shirts which didn't fit anymore, and gave me ideas for our anniversary dinner at a restaurant she'd asked about in our city's local sub. It felt like I'd turned on the cheat codes to our marriage. But after I lost my job, her posts took a turn. She began browsing the marriage/relationship advice subs, and after 3 weeks of me bombing countless interviews, she asked for tips over on dead bedrooms. Like I needed a reminder I couldn't perform. It was hard not revealing I knew she shared intimate details about our relationship with strangers online, but if I told her, she'd just make a new account, and I'd lose my window into her innermost thoughts. Her original posts had gained some traction, which meant tons of users asked for an update. Then she posted about how the situation had gotten worse. She wrote about how now I snapped over every little thing and had even started lashing out. The tension continued to swell. Soon came the ultimate gut punch, a confession post entitled, "I am terrified of my husband." Can you imagine what would have happened if a Reddit user went radio silent after that bombshell? It would have caused a scandal. An investigation. Talk about your wake-up calls. I calmed things down by cooking a few romantic meals and told her I was deeply sorry for dumping my frustrations on her. I even bought the damn hair care package. This made her post some positive updates. She wrote that, although we had a long way to go, things were definitely looking up. That we'd be okay. But the fact is, things aren't okay. And they'll never be okay again. Now I know what she really thinks of me. So I searched for subs she was still actively participating in. Subs like this one. And then I sat down to write my first ever post. She's sitting opposite me as I type this. There's a knife under my armchair, and I already know how I'll dispose of the body. Now it's just a case of waiting for her to read my confession and realize what's about to happen. So if you're reading this, Maria, it's time to look up.